Hi guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode. And in this episode we're going to look at bog plants and wet areas. What do we do with them? How do we cope with wet soil and wet areas and the plants we'll use? So I'm going to give you a selection of native New Zealand plants and also some exotic ornamental plants that will be quite at home and comfortable in these sort of wet, boggy situations. There's three main things that cause this sort of situation. One is a lot of rain. Two is soil that isn't free draining, so things like soils like clay soils, and also low-lying areas. So this is on my section, and this is the lowest lying section, and this is the place that gets the wettest and the boggiest, and all the water runs down here. I've got a sort of silt soil, so it does drain away. But if you've got a clay soil, then it could stay here and it could stay waterlogged for a long time. And that's why you need to know what sort of plants to put in these areas. So let's take a look.
Right, so what I thought I would do was look at some native plants first. So I've picked 40 plants. This is my reference go-to for looking for wet, boggy, tolerant native plants. So I wouldn't necessarily use all native plants in a situation like a wet, boggy situation, but if I needed to, this is the little reference that I've made for myself. So I'm sharing it with you guys. So the way this works is it starts off with the smaller plants right at the beginning, and it gets up to the sort of very large trees at the end. So I can then sort of go to this and I can pick, if I'm looking for a ground cover, then and a native ground cover, then I can pick one here. And there's one right at the beginning here, Pratia angulata. Ground smothering ground cover, has little tiny white flowers, would be good at the front of a border. This plant next to it is the Elastema rugosum. Now we just saw this the other day down in the Hamilton Gardens. It's a beautiful plant with bronze foliage, really stands out amongst all the green plants there. And I would definitely want to put that in somewhere next to the water so it just sort of kind of contrasts with the other plants. The carex grasses, there are a few here that are really good near water. This is the first one, Dissita. And then we've got ferns like the Blacknum fern and ferns like that, which will do well. The wire rush. The next one here that I would use a lot of, because it's very widely available, especially in New Zealand, is the Apodismia similis, and that's the oi. It's very drought tolerant, and it's basically a rush sort of plant. I did a video on that, so if you want to go and see that one, that's fine. We've got the bulrush type of plants. And then Astelia is another plant that looks nice and clumps, almost a little bit looks like a flax. So a lot of these are kind of like grass type, sort of flax type plants that seem to grow well near the water. And they look nice near the water too. So moving on there, we've got a few different carexes. Just sort of ones I don't tend to use. The things like this little coprosmus here, they come in a range. And this is one of the smaller ground covers, Coprosma rigida. And then I'd go all the way probably to something like the Toto. So we've got Cortidaria fulfilda and Celona. We've got the South, which is basically the South Island and North Island Toto. Plagianthus, occasionally. The biggest one of the characters there is Sector. And if you've got a big section where you've got a big pond area or a big swampy area, sure, you can put some of these plants. Quite often you don't have to pick every plant here. When you're doing landscape design, you'd probably pick five to seven plants, different types, and then repeat them throughout the design. Now, a very popular plant throughout New Zealand for coastal sections, very dry, exposed hills, and also swampy areas is the Phormium tenax, which is also known as the flax. And then you've got the mountain flax, which is Phormium cookianum. Both flaxes are really good in all those situations. I'd probably just I wouldn't probably put cookianum in a shady place, but if it's swampy, both do particularly well. Some more coprosmus on this other side of the page now, and Pseudowintra if you want a little bit of red tinged foliage. And of course, when you're doing a lot of gardens, there's predominant colour is green. So you kind of maybe, every so often, it's nice to sort of splash it up with a little bit of red colour, and it gives that sort of a little bit of interest, a little bit of contrast. Coprosma robusta is a bit of a scrappy plant, but it grows up to about sort of 3 meters, and it's got little red berries on. This would be a good sort of scrubby sort of plant to put in the background a little bit, and the berries obviously would attract some of the native birds. Plants I do quite like are the punga ferns, and these are the two Dixonias, squarosa and fibrosa. Probably my pick out of those two would be a close tie, but fibrosa is quite nice. These ones I'd probably put back a little bit further away from the water's edge, and they look, they're going to give you that real native, semi sort of subtropical look with those taller tree ferns. Leptospermum, the manukas, I would grow near in some of those swampy situations, along with the knee cow palm. Knee cow palms look great. They can tolerate a little bit of shade when they're a bit younger. They need a bit of protection until they get older. Once they get older and established, they can handle a little bit more of the colder conditions. But yes, again, another one of those plants like the pungas to sort of create some subtropical woodland feel. Cephala digitata is another nice one to give you that subtropical look with the 5 fingers. And then you've got the cordyline purple cabbage tree. Again, with purple foliage, it's going to be a good one just to sort of contrast against all that green. Both cabbage trees will go, again, like the flaxes, will go well in sort of exposed coastal conditions, full sun, and also drought, and then have this ability to withstand the wet and the boggy conditions too. Plagianthus, and then we've got some other ones here. The probably next one that you do see, though, you can see this one, is Carpodatus serratus, is the marble leaf putaweta, I think that's how you pronounce it. That one you see at Botanic Gardens around there too. They've got 2 large pond features, so you'll see that one there that they've used, and they sort of tend to clip that one. So other than that, we've got to the real big ones at the end here, and that's Podocarpus totra. The totra's big tree. Generally you'd see it in a forest, but it is one of those plants that also can tolerate some of the wet, boggy conditions. And then the Caecotea, which is the Decricarpus decridium, sometimes known as the swamp cypress. That is really a good selection of native New Zealand plants that I use as a reference. So that covers that. We'll now have a look at the exotic plants and see what we have there. Right, this is the next bit. This is the exotic plants that will do well in wet or boggy conditions. Again, so we start off the small ones, and it works across the page to the end with the bigger trees. So we're going to start off with some of the smaller grasses. This is the Ocorus, and it's a little yellow grass. We've got the Tradescantia, which has got the nice little blue flowers. Ligularia with the yellow splashes and dots on is a very good plant, as it's giving you the contrast. This nice bold foliage plant that looks really good. It's the same with the hostas. The hostas are great because they've got that sort of broad leaf and really can contrast to some of the other plants and really sort of stand out. Big downside to hostas though is that the slugs and snails do like them, and they are sort of basically deciduous. So things like the Ligularia has the advantage of being evergreen. So I'd probably tend more to go for Ligularia rather than the hostas. But if you live in a more temperate climate, more of a sort of colder climate, then hostas are used quite often, especially in the UK and English gardens. The Colocaceas, these are the sort of types of taro plants. Big, broad leaves, look amazing in sort of subtropical gardens and look great near water. Probably come next to the Xanthidicias, the calla lilies. These have got these aurum lilies have got these big, white, amazing flowers. Look, and they look great next to the water. They've got the big leaves as well. Papyrus is the paper plant, and all those sort of papyrus plants do really well. Kind of in also, if you were probably doing like an oriental style garden, that would be a perfect fit. Again, alocasia is those sort of taro sort of plants with the big broad leaves. Cypress is quite often seen next to water. It's a popular one. The black taro plant, the nigra, the alocasia is one I've got in my garden. I can show you a quick picture of that one. Irises, you see lots of irises near water and around the edges of water. If you ever get the chance to go to Monet's garden and just outside of Paris, his garden is well renowned for the irises. So we've got a few different ones there. Primula, that's a big leafed primula. And then coming down to some of these other ones, which I probably wouldn't use much. Canthus mollis, which is the bear's breeches, it does quite well. I think also that might have been, this is something you've got to be aware of, is that these are the exotic ornamental plants. Sometimes they actually seed and actually can outgrow a lot of the native plants. So in New Zealand, we've got a thing where some of these plants, and I think Acanthus mollis might be one of them, is that they're getting kind of put on the banned list. Agapanthus is another one that's on the banned list, but that's why if you're going to use Agapanthus, you go for those ones where the plants are sterile. So that's that one. Then we've got Rositos, those are a type of rushes. The big gunnera here, which you quite often see next to water features. It's a real, used as a real contrast in textures. The big bold leaf is just amazing by water. Again, I think that might be banned. So you've got elephant's ears, another one of the alocasia this time, which is almost very similar to its common name is elephant's ears, because the big leaves do look like elephant's ears. That's a good one again for more warmer climates where you don't get too much of the frost. Papyrus, the Cypress papyrus, Egyptian papyrus, very good against water. Allegia capensis, you see that a lot at Auckland Botanic Gardens. They've used that one down by their fence line. If you wanted a little bit of a cottage look, then you've got Salvia ulglinosa, bog sage. Some of these other ones I probably wouldn't use too much of until you get to probably the cannas. Cannas are quite good plants. They've got various ones here. Ones with one called Bengal tiger. It's got a bit of a yellow stripe to it, and the Tropicana black. I think there's also one called Black Knight. These cannas don't mind it next to the water. Got the weeping elm. Again, I probably wouldn't have used that at all ever, but that's one you could pick. And then going all up through here, you've got Taxodium, you've got black alder. Now, plants that I would say look amazing next to water are the weeping willows. So a couple here. You've got the golden weeping willow, that's the chrysocoma, and we've got the normal weeping willow, which is babylonica. And both get into big trees, but amazing form as well. So you're getting that weeping form, and it looks really, really nice next to water, and just love being right by the water. Again, another one that's very famous in some of the water gardens from Monet's garden. River birch, red alder, and the last one here is the Populus nigra italica Lombardi poplar. Quite often you might see those two together, actually, weeping willow and the poplar. You've got two different forms there. You've got the vertical form and the weeping form, very contrasting forms, which really are eye-catching. Okay, guys, that sums pretty much up all the plants that I could find. I've kind of indicated which ones I sort of tend to use. You've got 80 plants now to pick from, and there's probably a few more out there, but I think that's pretty much the whole gamut of wet and boggy plants that you can select. So next we'll have a look at how you might use these to create some drama. I've already discussed a few ways, but we'll just have a look at a couple of pictures where we can see the different plants in use. Okay, lastly we'll just look at how some of these plants are used. So this is some pictures, and you can just see the numbers relates to the type of plant. So basically two here, we've got the Cypress papyrus, and then we've got that alocasia, the black taro on the side here. The next picture, we've got some little irises down in the front here, and we've got the weeping willow, the Salix babylonica there by the water, looking really awesome. Then we've come to the next one. We've got these bear's breeches, the acanthus mollis with the big white flower spikes, which look really quite cool, along with some acorus down at the bottom here, that yellow little tinge grass. Nice little contrast and textures there from the bold to the thinner leaves of the grass there. Now this will be a typical, looking down this one here, typical water pond feature. And you can see what looks really amazing. You've got these big Dicksonia papunga ferns, the huge gunnera that looks incredible, and then alocasia and different sort of little plants down the bottom here. All nice changes in texture, and also a little bit of height changes there as well in form. And this next picture, we've got some irises, the blue irises in flower, along with some hostas, and astabil on the left there. Number 3 is astabil. And then another one with irises. Irises are very popular next to water and look great. Also used in some of the Japanese gardens. So looking down the bottom here, we've got a weeping willow. And then we've got let's have a look, number 2 is the papyrus by the water. And then Dicksonia fibrosa just in this one round here. And then next one, a colourful display of astabil. And all this colour here is astabil. And then we've got the primula halidoxa. And then we've got, Starkey's macarantha, number 3. Okay, that's that one. And then we've got this here. This almost looks like Mono's garden a little bit. I'm not sure if it is, but it looks kind of similar to his garden. We've got water lilies obviously growing in the water, and we've got these weeping willows that look just absolutely fantastic near a big pond feature. On this side of the page, we've got some more native plantings. So we've got the Formium, I think that's Tenax, and then we've got the Cordyline australis, and then we've got, it looks like another weeping willow here, and then we've got some Muhlenbeckia, which is not really a water plant. It's just further back in the background. I think on the other side here, it looks like we've got carex grasses on the other side of the bank here. Coming over to the next picture, we've got astabil at the front here. This is a pretty looking sort of colourful plant. More irises, and a Dicksonia squarosa just in the sort of like in the further back on the other side there. In this next picture, we've got the aurum lilies, the N.D.H, some carex, number 2, carex grasses here, and then we've got the acanthus mollis here, and then aristio, that's there, and then another nice little arrangement of plants. We've got a gunnera. Let's have a look. Where's the gunnera? This is the gunnera here. Number 1. This one here is the gunnera. Number 2, we've got the carex. Got those around the wrong way. I should fix that. And then we've got, what else have we got in there? We've got Dicksonia. So we've got a little Dicksonia palm, and also we've got a Acer palmatum, Atopurpureum, giving a nice sort of color contrast in there, which is really, really nice. On here, we've just got a picture with some Cypress papyrus, showing you how quite a nice form that is. It's different, and it's contrasting against some of these clipped box hedges. The colour lilies, or the aurum lilies here with the big white flower, that's the N.D.H, looking really almost actually growing in the water. And then again, we've got another native planting here. So we've got Carex virgata at the front here. That's the carex grasses, New Zealand native grasses. And then we've got the Cordyline australis. This is the cabbage tree, New Zealand cabbage tree, followed by the Formium tenax in the midground here. The Apodismus similis is this one here. This is the sort of native sedge, which is the oi oi, and that's just mass planted in probably what's like wet, boggy ground. And you can tell we've got this little walkway, little platform here to walk on, and also we've got the Cordyline australis growing up through the oi oi. In the last picture, we've got right at the front, we've got some pratia. We've got a little Dicksonia punga fern, and then we've got that Ligularia aurea maculata. That's the spotted Ligularia. Okay guys, that pretty much sums up this video. We've seen native New Zealand plants, we've looked at the ornamental exotic plants, and we've seen how we would use them in a landscaping with these plants. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found some information that's useful. If you have, then we'd like you to subscribe to build our channel up a little bit, and so that I can bring more videos to you. So like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.